Piece of the Pie. That's the one remaining song that I haven't spoken about. Piece of the Pie is a song that was actually named by Burt Baldwin one day in the studio, and I loved that name. I thought it was cool, so it stuck. This song was actually originally composed, created, finished, ready to go for a Dream Theater album. But what happens, and what's not unusual for Dream Theater, is that after we had this idea that we would create these little solo bits, we basically wrote ourselves out of the opportunity to do anything solo. And of course I was the first one to go off and create some solo piece. And so I had this whole cool thing done, and then it wasn't going to be used. So it wasn't a problem for me because I knew exactly where I wanted to use it. I thought, oh, this is cool, so I'll take this piece and I'll put it on my solo album. So you'll notice this piece has no drums because it's just me. There's no guest artists on it, there's no drumming on it. And it's a pretty wacky piece. There's a continuum solo on it, which you can hear. Towards the end of the song, there's kind of another tribute to Keith Emerson, because Keith used to do this thing where he would start his sequencer on the big modular synthesizer, and he'd start it going do 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 do, and it would go faster and faster and pan until the whole thing went crazy, and then it would end with a big splash. So at the end of Piece of the Pie, that's kind of like my tribute there in that way, and similarly. The Road Home was created in my studio. My studio is set up to be a MIDI environment. I have all my keyboards, I have my computer, I run a program called Digital Performer by Motu on it, and that is the kind of main recording mechanism that I use, and the computer automates my room of all these keyboards, and so I'm able to flesh out everything and do all the stuff. And what people need to realize about this album is that the core sound of it is me on my keyboards and Rod Morgenstein on the drums, and along with that I have these wonderful guest vocalists and guest guitar players. But there's no bass player, there's nobody playing rhythm guitar. And that's kind of important to realize. One is because I did a hell of a lot of work and I want people to know that. But two, it's interesting because people don't understand really the true power of the keyboard. It's difficult to understand because there's not many people that are using it in this way. People sometimes use keyboards these days, or most of the time, oh, I can play a chord and I'll have a string sound, or I'll do this and play a part. But these keyboards are tremendous instruments right now, and technology has come so far that so many things are possible. And I like to use, my keyboards to their full potential, and I like to perform and use them as big musical instruments. So this album, like many of my albums, is very much about keyboards with the live drummer, and then on top of that I have these guest spots where my guys did an amazing job. So after it was arranged in my studio and I had all my parts, then it was time to get to the next level and move all the stuff into Pro Tools in this case. And my engineer, who's been with me for many years, Mr. John Guth, he came to my house, and the first thing we had to do was to take all my parts and move them into Pro Tools. So he brought his Pro Tools rig to my house, and one by one we took every part that I played, no matter how small, if it was a timpani hit or a little V-sim thing or a radius line, everything got recorded. And of course, he's saying, oh my God, there's so many parts, there's 70 tracks of this song. Of course, he's not surprised because he has worked with me before, but it's a little bit shocking nonetheless. So we sat there for a few days until that job was done, and then he could bring it to his house. And John set up an FTP site. A lot of people ask me, well, how did you work with all those guys? Did they come to your studio? What was it like? What's happening? We work in a very high-tech way. My some of my guitar players, one lives in England, one lives in Italy, the other one lives in Germany. You know, so I have people like, you know, all over the place doing these parts in California and Nashville. So John set up an FTP site, and we were able to put up all the different files, and we would put up a Pro Tools file, we put up a MIDI file, we put up transcriptions, PDFs, all kinds of files, everything, so they could have any tool, any file that would help them to get the job done. And then when they were done with their parts, they would either send something back through the FTP site, or some of the guys decided to just, like, you know, express mail their parts on a disc. But that's the way we really work. Now Rod, he came into the studio. He was the one guy, as well as Bert, who came into the studio, and Rod did all his parts, because I like to be there, you know, of course, when the drums are going down. I mean, Rod could do it on his own because he's the most capable musician on the planet. But, you know, it's something that we really work together on, the foundation of the music, and so I was there for that. And then the rest of it, I really, you know, everything was done on the phone, through email. You know, in a couple of cases, we'd go back and try some different things. But that's the way this kind of album is made. And I was assisted by Danny Kostrich, who helps me with these kind of things and also runs my online conservatory, does all the business stuff behind the scenes during that. So, you know, this album was a mixture of just kind of like, you know, doing my thing, doing all the keyboards, but also it was a big production. And that's the other side of things. Whenever I take on this kind of project, I become like this producer guy who's got to figure out how to take all these different talents and how to get them all coordinated so they'll actually deliver their material in time, and to make this all happen. But it's all part of the fun, and it's all what I do. And I hope you enjoy the Road Home album as much as I enjoyed making it, because it was really a work of passion, and it was a great time. And I'll see all of you out on the road.